Leadership risk obviously has always been a huge topic for organisations. So thinking about predominantly succession and what is the next generation, where is the next generation coming from? What's happened, I think, during the pandemic is that conversation has been accelerated hugely. Some organisations have found that they actually don't need all the executives that they thought they needed. Some have found out that actually the management styles of some of their leaders aren't reflecting the working conditions and patterns that the future is likely to bring, so with hybrid working. And some are simply finding that actually they need new positions added to the board. So, there's always been a focus on leadership and succession, but I think it's much more acute now, and it's a much higher on the agenda now than it probably has been for many years. I think what organisations have traditionally done and done well is internal succession. There's a huge amount online around governance and structures. You can find hundreds of different versions of the 9-box grid of talent. You can find an awful lot of very good, compelling, strong leadership development and succession planning material. Almost all of it is focused on the internal cohort of talent. Now, I read a couple that he was talking about external candidates only on an ad hoc basis. Another one which only referenced in external talent at all in the context of interims. One of the most frightening things I saw was an emergency succession plan. Now, to me, that's not a succession plan. That's a problem that you're trying to solve. That's not succession at all. So, internal talent is done reasonably well. Not all organisations. Some organisations just deal with it, deal with succession, on a very reactive basis. But a lot of organisations do it well. What almost every single one of them misses is the external talent. Now, that's a really in a lot of ways it's to be commended that organisations are thinking really hard about how they can develop their own internal talent. The problem with that is, from a purely organisational standpoint, you really run the risk of missing out on some of the best talent, and therefore you really run the risk of not making your business grow as well as it could. The example that I use is if you think about professional football, if you go back 20 years, Ajax in the Netherlands was lauded as being, one of the best football teams, if not the best football team in Europe. They had a fabulous, academy program. They had this sort of conveyor belt of talent coming through, who were all homegrown talent, and that was why Ajax was such a great team in the, showing my age, in sort of the 80s and early 90s. If you wind forward to today and you look at Manchester City as an example, who I'm not a fan of, but if you look at Manchester City, they have almost no homegrown players in their first team. They have one or two, a handful. And what's changed is that in football, people have gone from growing their own and developing their own to actually looking at what is the best talent that is available globally for my team. So so football's moved on in a way that business, frankly, hasn't. So those businesses that are starting to think about where's the best global talent for my team are the ones that are winning. Yeah, I think number one is still a lack of representation. So again, some organizations do a very good job of making their board more representative. Many, again, the diversity can often sit in certain disciplines, HR and legal particularly. So I think improving representation on the board is the first priority, and it's tough, but people are certainly trying to address that issue. I think the second is the fact that an awful lot of leadership hiring is still reactive. It is at point of need. It is at point of resignation. And that leads on to the third point, which is many, possibly even most organizations are still not taking an adequately broad view of leadership talent before they're appointing. But I think the things that HR leaders can do to improve leadership succession is consider the broader talent pool that they are wishing to engage with, or they could potentially engage with as a business. I think they should be bold, because actually, if a lot of organisations aren't doing it well, the ones that are doing it well stand out, regardless of whether they're a funky tech startup or not. So I think be bold, and I think then there absolutely needs to be a plan. So people need to sit down and, in a very simple way, there's simple diagnostics available. We have one where you can actually list out your leadership, list out your potential successors, and very quickly tell yourself where your flight risks are, where your succession risks are, and then do something about it. Lastly, there are plenty of ways to go about identifying potential successors ahead of need. And again, that's really still quite rarely done.